DAOs, smart contracts, DApps. Maybe you can give like a basic all around of these three things.
Absolutely. So
if a small village wants to do DAO and wants to maybe adopt some smart contracts, maybe use blockchain for transparency, is there any way to easily adopt all these things?
I think it's getting easier and easier, to be frank. I think there's a lot of opportunities to get yourself started as a builder, but there's also like a lot of services that evolve, like a lot of products that can also handhold you throughout that process.
I mean, the possibilities are endless then, right? Into decentralized little organizational communities.
Absolutely. I think it will become more and more decentralized. For me personally, I think real world assets is really like a big thing. Like, I believe there's huge potential behind that. There's so much potential, not only thinking about real estate or tokenization of stocks or stuff, but like there's so much also when you think about music rights or other kind of like royalties and things. Like there's so many opportunities where you really can access like a whole new universe of opportunities for people that typically would not have access to that kind of stuff, right? And so it gives people access to not only like new financial ways, but also maybe to a new thinking here.
What would be then the new world in the making for you?
Breaking boundaries, or having a huge mind shift happening, that existing structures might not be the best choice for the future anymore. Maybe we need to rethink a lot of stuff. As you said absolutely correctly, like opportunities are endless. It's just, I think, a lot like in our mind, like that we as individuals or as communities, like we need to think differently, be open for that new world, remove barriers, break barriers.
Hi, and welcome back to New Worlds in the Making. Today I'm speaking with Sascha Götz, co-founder and director of Rootstock Collective, an organization that opens up an entirely new world of possibilities. Built on Bitcoin, Rootstock Collective explores how we can coordinate in new ways using DAOs, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, smart contracts, and blockchain infrastructure. But what do these terms actually mean? And what kind of world do they make possible? That's exactly what we're going to explore in this conversation. So, let's dive in. Okay, cool. Sascha, thanks so much for joining today. I'm very excited to do this.
Thank you so much for having me. I think it's really a great opportunity and I'm really looking forward to the next couple of hours.
Me too. Maybe let's start with a little bit more about you personally. Can you tell us a little bit? How did you get here?
Sure. So I'm from Germany. I'm more specifically like from the south of Germany, a city called Stuttgart. A lot of folks might not be familiar with it, but like all of those that are car geeks might know about it because it's the home of Mercedes and Porsche. So very industrial area, lots of like enterprise, corporate style companies and stuff. A lot of like the traditional way you would go when you grew up in a region like that is just like join a job there, stay there for 40, 50 years, and then you retire, and that's kind of it. I luckily had the chance, like during my studies, to follow that path for some time and join Mercedes-Benz in Germany and in the US, and did my diploma thesis, etc., with them, and figured out this is definitely not going to be my career. Like this is, for me personally, the most boring thing I can ever envision. A lot of my friends are on that track, and I totally respect it because it gives them also like a lot of security and stuff. So I can totally understand why people would join that. But like for me, it was definitely like more of a warning signal. So after studying, I mainly then decided to go into stuff that's more interesting to me. So I've done a couple of mobility startups around car sharing, scooter sharing, motor scooter sharing. I've co-founded like an audio tech startup with an old high school friend of mine. We did synthesizers and music mixers and stuff for a couple of years. I co-founded at one point like a travel basically a trip agency combined with a social media platform. I've then at one point decided to join the crypto space, and I guess like this is also what we're going to be talking about for quite some more deep dives there. But like for me, the one thing all of those things had in common, it was always like it's stuff that was never done before, and that made it attractive to me. It was always a risky endeavor, basically. But on all those things, it was pioneering work. So it was always something where you would learn a new thing basically every day, every week. You always had challenges that nobody ever came along, and there was no playbook, right? Like in all the things, it was always like, try, and if it doesn't work, improve or fix or whatever. So I think that overall, like, was something that became like that mantra for myself, like to really like looking for those kind of opportunities. And then when the chance turned up, like to join crypto or Web3 blockchain space in the wider sense, that was for me like a very logic step then to do.
And where do you think that curiosity comes from? That risk and curiosity?
It's a very good question. I don't know. Like, I think it's just I like the challenge and really to prove that stuff is working that has not worked before. Also, like when I was still younger, I think now I'm probably also like a bit, personally a bit more thoughtful for things. But like when I was younger, I was really like, you would say probably a wild one. Like I tried a lot of different sports. There was no risk that was big enough, etc. So I still do like a lot of things. Like I'm a passionate snowboarder and stuff, but like I'm more thoughtful about how I do things nowadays, and to mitigate at least like some of the risks. But maybe that was like where that drive came from. And I think also, yeah, that challenge. It's just like, it's something that's so fulfilling. Like it can be so hard when you're in that time, but whenever you look back to like, okay, that was really the worst time of all, and you managed your way through it, and that rewarding feeling, this is something money can't buy, right? Like this is just like the feeling you get by that. It's yeah, not to replace with anything else, I would say. So I think that is part of like what brought me into that like curiosity, like when it comes like to the professional career.
Interesting. And very brave as well, because to start all these endeavors.
Yeah, I mean, my mom, when I told her back in the days, like, I'm not gonna follow like that corporate track, and she was like, you're so crazy. Like everyone, like if you go like and you get a contract offered from Mercedes-Benz in the region where I'm from, like that's like the golden ticket that you can get, right? Because it's so safe. You make all your living through to you retire. You have a very good life typically. And then I told her, no, I'm gonna put it down or turn it down and follow another track. She was really like, she was thinking I lost my mind.
No, I totally get you. Really, like I'm half German, and especially my German family was a little bit challenged by me not following a traditional route. So
can imagine. Yeah,
I really get you here. Yeah, I think also it's very scary even to us, even especially to us, that we are going a not traditional way, because it's kind of it's not something that has been done before. So then, like, I mean, everything that you were just saying, I mean, this is like creating the path, right? So that others can follow exactly what you're doing as well with Rootstock Collective, which I'm very intrigued by. Maybe what brought you into the crypto space, and why building on Bitcoin? Maybe we can also after go into
absolutely. So I think at that point it's early 2021 when I joined the space, and 2021 was like a very special year, right? Like a heavy bull, a heavy bull market. Like everyone was so hyped about crypto. I had like some interactions with it before, but mainly from, okay, I'm gonna try and play around with such and such tokens and coins, but like never looked into it like from a professional perspective beforehand. And when I was at the point where I said like, okay, now it's time to open a new chapter and looking for an industry that's really like attractive to me, there was basically a handful of those. There was AI, there was autonomous driving, which is kind of related, right? And then there was blockchain and crypto. And then I was starting to dig a bit deeper, looking into different companies, looking into different projects. And for me, the fascinating thing was it was similar to the things I've done before. Like it was at a very pioneering stage, but it was way bigger than anything I've ever done before. Like, because it's not only, like there's one very specific use case. You just have to figure out the operational part or the financial part, and then you can start building and creating. It was way more than that, like, because it's really like we want to create systems, right? Like over time, like replace existing systems and whole infrastructure. So it's way more than just like proving that one use case or one value prop can work. It's way, way more than that. So that in total with the state it was back then, or it somehow still is, that was something that really attracted me from the very get-go. And then when the opportunity turned up, like to join Rootstock, back in the days I first joined at Rootstock Labs, for me, it was just like one of those things where I saw, okay, it's the OG in Bitcoin L2s, and I guess like we will come to that in more detail in a sec. But like, it's one of the OGs. It hasn't really delivered or built any significant traction by then. So there's still a lot of like things missing, and a lot of things that I can potentially, like with my skill set, can help to improve and to do basically. So yeah, that basically brought me to the space. And then I had 3 conversations with back then the COO, the CEO, and the chief people officer. And then it was a done deal. I joined and I'm still around.
So cool. Yeah. Wow. And the systems you were mentioning, what do they propose differently? How do they build new systems?
So Rootstock specifically or the industry?
Both, maybe. Like, you can start with whatever you feel.
So I think the good thing about Rootstock is basically Rootstock is a Bitcoin L2 sidechain, and it's the very first of this kind. It was going on mainnet 7.5 years ago, so it has been around for quite some time as well. So this is why I keep saying like it's the OG basically. The good thing here is like it brings together the best of both worlds. It brings the security and the store of value from Bitcoin, plus it combines it with the programmability of Ethereum. So it adds that extra layer where you can do smart contracts and DApps and all that good stuff, but on top of Bitcoin, not on top of Ethereum. Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is still king. Like all the people outside of crypto, they might not know about any other token or any other crypto than Bitcoin, right? Maybe some of them would know about Ethereum, but then that's about it. Like if you're, of course, into Web3, you know a lot of altcoins, you know a lot of additional stuff. But like if you're outside of that world, people might only know Bitcoin, right? And they might also know it like for the wrong utilities and purposes. But like they would still know it. So that's the good thing, right? So that combination here and there. And I remember like also the thing here is like Rootstock and the 5 co-founders back then, they really did a fantastic job into introducing all those concepts. Like they brought merge mining, which is now securing the Rootstock network with the same security levels like the Bitcoin network, basically. So we have like 87% hash rate at the moment, which is really incredible. And I remember like it took one of the founders like many months. Like he was traveling, I think, for 1.5 years, once a month, like to China, to convince the big miners back in the days, like, hey, we have those 5 dudes from Argentina. We want to do something else with Bitcoin, bring it to the next level and like just increase the usability of it a lot. And we need you for it because you need to help us secure it. So you can imagine like how their reaction was like when he showed up the first couple of times. They probably just thought like, okay, there's that crazy guy, like he's not going to come back anymore. But like at one point they were really like getting more and more into it, and they understood like the big concept behind it. So yeah, this was one of the things. But then as said, like there's also that link to Ethereum. So we also brought EVM compatibility into the game, that people that are already building on Ethereum, like Solidity programmers, can also easily transition into Bitcoin in form of Rootstock, basically. So for me, it was just like a good starting point, because it comes from that huge and rich foundation, and it just enabled so many different ideas when you just like let your mind free and think about it. Like there's so many endless opportunities, and I think that combination of the foundation just builds a very good use case here.
Okay, fascinating. Let's get maybe a little bit more into the basics, because I think a lot of people won't really know what we're talking about. So so maybe let's start with what are maybe DAOs, smart contracts, DApps. Maybe you can give like a basic all around of these 3 things, so then we have the basics to then continue.
Absolutely. So a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. What it basically does, like it's governed by the community and by code. So all the decision making is in the hand of the community. It's like another approach than just doing like a centralized entity or corporation or any kind of business where you have like that central decision making point where you would decide, okay, we're going to spend money on that, we're going to spend money on this, etc. So in a DAO, it's definitely different because like that whole organization basically makes the decision making for the areas you would like that organization to make the decisions on. So there's also different use cases and different focus areas, but we can come to that later in more detail. If you think about smart contracts, it's basically code that executes automatically when certain conditions are met, like almost like legal agreements, right? Like you have like something that triggers something, and then the smart contracts just act. So it's also like something that would always happen, right? Like you cannot manipulate because it's predefined. The trigger will be sent and the action will follow, basically. A DApp is an application that's built on top of a blockchain there. Like so it can basically be anything. It can be a game, it can be a lending protocol, a saving, a borrowing, an exchange, thousands of use cases you can envision like to put into a DApp, but it all starts like typically with very like basic financial instruments, if you will. But basically every app that people can interact with on top of a blockchain would fall in that category.
Okay, so basically, all what Rootstock Labs at that moment did was kind of enable all that building onto Bitcoin, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And what opportunities does this offer? Why is this that revolutionary?
I think the first and foremost important thing there is like it's all decentralized, right? It does not happen with a middleman. There's no central entity like a central bank or whatever that has control over it. Like it's immutable, it's independent, it's decentralized. So I think those are the main advantages because it's sensor resistant. It has no way for bigger manipulations, right? Like, and it's not controlled by a central entity or government, etc. And that also connects quite good to where the founders are coming from. Like those folks all came from Argentina or all come from Argentina. And Argentina, as we know, historically had quite wild and difficult times when it comes like to basic financial things like super inflation. There's really a lot that's still happening nowadays. It's a bit more calm, but it's still nothing compared to any country in Europe. So it's still quite bad. But like a couple of years ago, like the inflation rates were so high, there was no way for people to save their earnings, to convert them into safe, stable or like into safe currencies, fiat currencies or stable coins. So there was all those basic financial instruments were not existing or not accessible to many, many people. So there's a lot of underbanked or totally unbanked people that don't have that access or pay crazy rates for entering those financial systems. So therefore, that real world push basically brought or led to the whole inception of Rootstock. And I think that's something that you can see also nowadays, not only in Argentina or in the Latin region. You can also see it like in Africa, in a lot of like Asian countries, etc., where you will see like the same things happening over and over again. And there's just so much utility you can provide with offering those technological advancements to those guys in order to make sure they can get the best out of that and that they can get a fair access to any financial systems.
Yeah, I think we will need that probably more and more coming into the future. And can you explain now a little bit more about the history of Rootstock Labs and then Collective? Because this is also where you started also.
Absolutely. So with Rootstock Labs, as I said already, like the OG, it did a lot of good stuff, but it was still, when I joined also in 21, at a point where the adoption was not great yet, right? Like there was some projects already around that did very specific use cases that really worked out quite well. But there was still no real massive adoption happening at that stage. And I think part of that is also related to one of the initial flaws, if you will, in the design of Bitcoin. because Bitcoin was never meant to become that productive layer at any point. It was always meant to be a store of value and to be the most secure store of value, right? It incentivized the miners, so the people securing the network, and it over time also, as it turned out, incentivized a lot like the people holding Bitcoin and selling it for a higher price at any point. So those were the two different groups of people that were always rewarded so far. But then what happens like with the other folks, like what happens with those builders? Because it was not foreseen in the original design, there was nothing thought for the builders. So we were thinking a lot about like, how can we make sure that those guys really like can make a living out of that, and how do the people using their products and supporting those builders also participate and prosper in that whole process. So this is kind of like where we then at one point within Rootstock Labs came to the conclusion we need to take that step into decentralization and create something like a DAO in order to really make sure that the long-term sustainability here for those builders can really work out at one point. And this is when we then created the DAO. And I, at that point, as I was like involved in the project from the very early days, for about a year within Rootstock Labs, first before we launched it, decided to take on that first like spin-off or spin-out, if you will, like as a complete separate entity, as a complete separate business from Rootstock Labs, and create that foundation that then supports the DAO on its mission.
Okay, and can you explain more about how does this DAO work? Because it's beautiful to hear it and know the theory about it, but then like we have an actual example here. So maybe can you explain us a bit more?
Absolutely. So the Rootstock Collective, what it does is basically it's focused on the decentralization and on the ecosystem growth of Rootstock. There's many other use cases for DAOs. Like some DAOs are there for protocol governance. So let's say you have a product yourself, like a huge exchange, like Uniswap, for instance, right? Like they have their huge DEX, and like the protocol can then be put into a DAO to govern like the community would decide those are the product features that we really want to see there. Those are the things we want to see in the next release. Those are the major milestones in terms of product roadmap, etc., etc. So this is one of the things. You could also do like connected like to more real world tangible things, right? Like you could say my DAO is there to plant trees. So the community basically decides where to plant those trees, what kind of trees, etc., etc. So you can do like all sorts of stuff. In our case, at the moment, and this is of course not limited to that, but for the moment, it's like about ecosystem growth and decentralization. So we want to bridge that gap that I mentioned earlier around that value capture for those builders and make sure that they can generate like additional rewards, revenues, income structures for their projects by having access like to a community and financial funding. As I said, it's not only the financial funding, it's also the community aspect. So you can almost see it like a big hub that brings like different communities from different builders into one central point. And the idea there is it gives access to a wider community to each of those individual builders, because every builder that joins, as you can imagine, they will bring their own transaction volumes, they will bring their TVL, but they will also bring their community. So it will merge all of that like at one central spot, which then will benefit all the individuals or the individual projects and players in there, because it gives them access to more funding, more revenue, more community access, etc. So this is kind of like the idea behind it. And this is what we are pretty much focused on at the moment. But we are also already planning to start handing over certain protocol governance things from Rootstock into the Rootstock Collective. There's one that's called, for instance, the RNS, the Rootstock Naming Service. So this could be a first good step for us to also start doing more protocol governance in there. And we've also recently added some kind of like social governance, if you will, or social interaction governance. So we put like a proposal around like the first pilot to start building an ambassador network around the globe. So it will start quite small, like with 2 to 3 ambassadors. But like the idea here is also to drive education around like what blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin, but also specifically Rootstock actually is and what people can do with it. And typically it turns out like that those personal interactions, like in smaller hubs or in communities, works quite well apart or on top of the online approach. So this is something what we are also already working on. But as said, like there's so many ways like what you could do at the end with the DAO, and the community decides it for you, because the community is the user of the products ultimately, and of the DAO, right? So they typically would have a good feel for what are really the things that we care about. What do we believe are the next things we really, really need to grow that whole thing? And yeah, so this is what we are up to.
It's so fascinating. Also, all the possibilities that are suddenly open, right? Because the only way that we could think of decentralized organizations was up till now cooperatives, right? This was like the most participative way of organizing ourselves in organizations. But this is opening so many opportunities, possibilities, so many doors. You were mentioning all these builders. What do they build on Rootstock? And then also, how do they get that funding?
Okay, so very good question. I would say it's basically not really limited to a specific product category or product type. So we are open for almost everything, right? Of course, it has to be within legal boundaries and regulatory boundaries, but like apart from that, we are pretty much open. So basically everyone can come and start building on Rootstock. What we see a lot happening, and those are typically the things that also get most traction, is like very classic financial instruments like lending, borrowing, saving, exchanges, etc. So this is one of or some of the things that really get good traction. But there's other stuff as well, right? Like there's tokenization of stocks. There is ordinals. There is NFTs, yes, for Bitcoin less, but like there's ordinals or like alternatives to NFTs, and there's so many different things. There's also gaming, which is probably not the best use case, to be frank, for Bitcoin or Bitcoin L2s yet, because of like transaction times and velocity there. But like in theory, it could also become at one point, like when there's certain technological evolutions around, it could also become a case. But I think stuff like real world assets, for instance, this is something what's super, super interesting, because those guys are typically looking for more security. They are willing also to spend more fees for knowing that everything is very secure, and those things are typically quite well connected, like to the technological aspects of Bitcoin and also of Rootstock here. So those could also be use cases. So again, long story short, we don't have any limits like when it comes to those builders. I just wanted to lay out some of the things that are already happening. Then we want to support those builders along their journey, right? We want to make sure that early stage builders have access to certain support that they need. That might be a grant, that might be some support on their marketing, that might be some support in their socials, and that might be some advice when it comes to, I don't know, like security audits, legal stuff, etc. So we can connect people and our builders like with those guys. We have a great network in all possible areas. So this is something what a lot where builders need a lot of support with. But then we also have something what we call the collective rewards. This is basically coming back to that thing about value capture earlier. Like this is where we think also more mature, more seasoned builders get access like to additional rewards, and where also the people backing those guys get additional rewards out of that system. So basically how it works, like there's bi-weekly payouts of the DAO Treasury. All the builders that are whitelisted and qualified for participating keep pitching to the community, hey, this is what we are doing, this is what we need those sources for, this is what we could do with the additional funds. Like maybe we can visit an additional conference, maybe we can do a marketing campaign, maybe we can, I don't know, hire an additional contractor for so many hours a month. And the community either decides we like it or we don't like it. If they like it, they put down their votes. And based on the ratio you get within those 2-week cycles, you would get the payout proportion of that DAO treasury. What you predefine as a builder is the kickback you give to the community for voting you. So both sides will basically benefit. Both of them get rewarded for participating in those cycles. And it's also quite cool for the guys voting for the projects, because it almost puts you like into a Shark Tank, Dragon's Den. I don't know like which country people are from, but like in one of those formats, right? You're not putting your own money on the bet here. You just basically help to manage the funds that are in existence there and help to allocate those funds in order to support the projects that you believe make the biggest contribution to the ecosystem that you as a contributor / participant would like to see grow.
That's so cool. It's like Shark Tank and like a Shark Tank and crowdfunding together. It's like it's fascinating. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And where's the money coming from the DAO's treasury?
So at the moment, the money is still coming from donations. So we are at the moment still living off donations from various entities. But like the goal is to over time make it also sustainable. And by sustainability, I think we've managed to identify an edge that not a lot of DAOs or similar organizations have done before. Like we want to start allocating some of the things that are currently going into Rootstock, more on the Rootstock Lab side, stuff like network transaction fee share, stuff like protocol fees, like from the RNS, for instance, like that with naming service protocol that I've mentioned earlier, but also like, and more importantly, like those transaction fees that should then over time get more and more allocated like into the DAO treasury. And then that whole flywheel again comes into spin and fruition, if you will, because every builder that comes, every builder brings their transactions, brings their monthly active users, etc. So every new builder will also add into that flywheel, right? Because there's more funds to be distributed. So the more builders you get, the more you get into that flywheel and the more amounts you get distributed. This is the basic concept and idea behind it.
That's so cool. It's so genius.
We had a lot of help coming to that point as well, to be frank.
I mean, it is a whole process, and I mean, it's what you were saying, like building something completely new, and sustainable, not based just on donations, which is fascinating to have that like real circular economy, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And of course, I don't want to like false manage expectations there. Like it probably always needs to be considered as something additional. This is not going to make all your business, right? Like you still need your, let's say, your core operations, your core revenue generation, etc. But it's a nice add-on, right? Like it can maybe allow you to do something in addition to, again, like go to one more conference or two more conferences or do more marketing or spend some money on an extra position that you might want to hire for. But like it's not going to like sustain your whole business, of course. But like it's, I think, something that really rewards the builders in a very good way.
Yeah. And okay, going back a little bit to the understanding of how DAOs work. Who gets to build those smart contracts? Because if a DAO is based on smart contracts on blockchain, who decides that?
So the smart contract for the DAOs, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we've built those internally. The one that we are currently using for all that distribution logic, etc., what I just described. But we are also like fully transparent here, like with the code and everything. So you can see all the white papers. It's open source. You can basically see everything what's happening there. And over time, we also want to get into a stage where we also leave off our hands more and more from what's there at the moment. But this is a process. Like this is something you would not do from the very get-go because there's still a lot of risk associated. There's many bad actors out there. Basically, all the money that you typically have in the DAO treasury is always a good bug bounty. And if you have a lot of money there, it might become very interesting for people to start figuring out certain ways to get access to those funds. So you want to play it in a very nice and safe sequence to not take any risks there for the community and ourselves, of course, because we want to be very thoughtful with also the funds that we receive there and the funds we're going to distribute. But over time, the idea is definitely to also give more of that power fully back into the community.
And what would you like to see built more of, or what is really something that you've found already super fascinating that was built, and maybe what could be in the future be built that you're looking for?
That's also a really good question. So as said, like in general, we are open to everything. Like I personally, I like some of the quirky, geeky stuff as well. Like we, for instance, also have like some deep in things there. There's one thing that's called Satoshi. Like he has a little piece of hardware, and I'm also a hardware person. Like I like physical products a lot. So this is why I like that project. But we also have Asami Club, which is doing like a lot of like social media rewards. So when you're on Twitter, you can get rewarded in their tokens and other benefits and stuff. So there's a lot of different things. So I personally would say I've seen a lot of really, really cool and fascinating projects. At the end, I like the ones that really manage to get a connection to an end user and get people using their product, because the best idea will not work if nobody's using it, right? Like you can have the best product in the world, the best ideas, the best features. If nobody's using it, it's dead. So I think everything that helps to connect with people and make them use it is a good thing. And sometimes we might have not thought about certain use cases or adoptions before, and out of the sudden it turns out, hey, this is really a cool thing. But for me personally, I think real world assets is really like a big thing. Like, I believe there's huge potential behind that. There's so much potential, not only thinking about real estate or tokenization of stocks or stuff, but like there's so much also when you think about music rights or other kind of like royalties and things. Like there's so many opportunities where you really can access like a whole new universe of opportunities for people that typically would not have access to that kind of stuff, right? Because I don't know, like buying royalty or like buying the rights on a song, for instance, it's so expensive like that. Typically people would, first of all, they would never think of that, right? Like, oh, actually I can buy a song and then I get monthly royalties when radio stations or whatever is playing that song, right? People would not think about it. But like with the access there on crypto and the tokenization, you could just buy a small fragment and you would get your little portion of the overall royalties. Then so it gives people access to not only like new financial ways, but also maybe to a new thinking here.
Wow, that's fascinating. And because also what I'm very intrigued with is decentralizing AI. Do you think we could do that too?
That's a very technical question, to be frank.
That's why.
I personally guess like there might be some limitations like on the technical side at the moment, because I think it consumes like a lot of processing power, and I'm not sure if the blockchain is really the best the best home for that at the moment. There could be certainly like a lot of interactions happening, but not sure if AI should be fully run on blockchain. I think more like personally that's my gut feel. Like
Yes, I said no. I'm super interested in you personally. Yeah.
So maybe I personally think like there could be a lot of like combinations and like interaction happening between the two technologies. So just like you could also go classic again, right? Trading bots. This is probably one of the things you hear at the moment most about, like when it comes to AI on blockchain, so that people would use AI for trading bots to create like certain portfolios and investment opportunities or risk calculations, whatever, and then the AI would basically help you to follow that same trading bot. There's other things like a lot of customer service, a lot of like developer support can happen through AI. So this is, I think, some of the use cases that are more mature already and that can really work well. Yeah, I think like having an AI completely operated on blockchain, again, I think there's just like a lot of technological limitations. But I think if there are good things like the examples I just mentioned, then it's definitely a good route forward. And there will be more and more things happening around blockchain in combination with AI. But also, to be very fair, like from my observation from like the last conferences I've visited, everyone nowadays puts AI on their flag, like even if it's just to have it on their backdrop, we do that with AI. And then if you ask folks, what do you actually do with AI? It turns out like I personally would say 80% of them are not really doing AI. They do some kind of like database interaction in the background, and that's kind of like it. But they still claim to do something with AI. So we also have to be very careful to not become a victim of the bullshitters. They excuse the French, but like there's, in every season, there's one buzzword. People put it on their flag and they say, yeah, we're all down for that. But then it turns out they're actually not. So I think there's lots of cool use cases, but you need to be very careful with what's really something that adds value and what's just there for the marketing.
Yeah. And you were mentioning, so now this could be a new way of thinking about economics, what you were saying about having royalties, maybe a song. Because this is one of the things that I'm, questioning myself. How do we, the more we go into in a world where we have more access to things that are abundant through now all the technology that we have now available, also AI, we are probably going to have less jobs. So our economic needs to change in some way or another, in our economical thinking. So I think this is very fascinating of the idea of changing a little bit, maybe our idea of economics in terms of royalties. How can you maybe lay this out a little bit more of how would you think this could look in like 5 to 10 years or something?
That's a very long time span for crypto and blockchain, and overall like where we are at the moment from a technological perspective as well. 5 to 10 years is really
maybe
a lot.
Just 2. Okay, let's say 2.
No. I mean, let's play it. Let's play it like 5 to 10 years. I think one of the major challenges still for the whole sector is mass adoption, right? So I think this is something what we have to overcome as a whole industry. We need to make user accessibility, UX, way more attractive for regular users like Web3 natives or Web2 users, like people that are not in touch with crypto and blockchain yet, like way more easy, right? And I think this is the first thing that we need to overcome. As soon as we like bridge that gap or break the chasm, I think this is when it really can become quite massive, right? Because out of the sudden you could think like when we go back to that example of the real world assets, let's say there's a person in Vietnam. Vietnam is maybe for real estate investments, I don't know, like you're living on the countryside, maybe even if you buy a nice or you manage to do some savings to invest like in a property and you want to rent it out or whatever to make some additional like passive income, it might not be the most straightforward use case. It might be very limited. You will be checked by the local banks. You still might need to have like a lot of savings for the down payment, etc. So by having access then to blockchain products, right? Like real world assets, for instance, you could also just go and buy a fraction of an apartment that's in Dubai or so, right? And you already know, hey, there's like very rich clients that have like a lot of money they spend on their rent. So even if you just buy a little fraction, maybe for Vietnam, that could already be a good passive income, right? And you don't have any bank checks, any additional like, okay, is that person like legit for that mortgage, yada, yada. So you really can just like purchase a little thing and you can start creating your passive income. So I think over time, like a lot of those cases, and not only on the real world assets will evolve, like, but the first thing is really we need to get to that mass adoption first. And this is still a very, very long way. So coming back to the 5 to 10 years, I would personally say we're probably 2 to 5 years away from where we technological enable people to easily enter that Web3 world. So where people can come and they don't need to think about, okay, there's tens of thousands of blockchains and side chains. There's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of tokens. So which is the thing I really need to get in order to start playing the game? I think this is something what we are as a whole industry are still not doing well, right? Like people are just input overkilled, like as soon as they enter. And then when you bring them even one layer further down, like where it's, and then you can do that, and then you use those to do like those rewards that you get here or that outcome that you get here, you can use it here to secure against or whatever. And then you can do something with what you unlock there by securing that asset, and you can do something else with it. Like, and then it gets very, very pro user. So this is like, I would say also like one very specific side of that industry. And those guys are really super, super helpful, like all those users, in order to massively evolve technology. But like, I think we really still need to focus a lot like on those like probably 90% plus 95% plus of human mankind that currently have no clue what's happening behind the curtains in Web3.
Yeah, and I guess also the real case and real world use, right? It's not just that it's something for trading or something for
exactly.
But more like, okay, so how do I make use of it in my day-to-day, in my practical, tangible things, right? So
100%.
Yeah, so I mean, this is also the purpose of this. So
and there's many things, right? Like, it's not only reward assets, it's also very classic things like remittances, cross-border payments. Like, this is a very common thing, like especially if you're thinking about people from Latin America. A lot of folks from Brazil, Argentina, and all the other countries are working in Spain, Portugal, in the US, and what they want to do with getting there, making like basically more money in the jobs they would typically do back home, and then they send back the money to their families that are still back home, right? Or their friends or whatever. But like, this system is a very common thing, and it is happening for many, many decades already. But like, at the moment, you have like, depending on which country you are from and which country you are working, then you have very limited options. Like, one, for instance, Western Union charges so many fees. It's ridiculous, right? Like, so the people that are already like, let's say, not in any financial wealth, and in a, let's say, more like very hard and tough economic situation, those are the ones that getting charged even more than other guys would be. Because if you're like in Europe or in the US or so, you're in a first world country somewhere, you can just easily use other services like Wise, pay relatively low fees, even still higher than blockchain. But like, you could have like a quite decent product at the other end. But the more tricky your situation is, the more shitty the products that you need to use will become, right? And the more you will be ripped off during that process. So there's a lot of those real world use cases as well that we really try to support. And then you will get like all that additional stuff over time, like just as said, like basic financial systems, access to stuff that you can just sleep a bit calmer, that you don't need to have your money all like in builds basically under your pillow and have to protect it against like I don't know, like physical takeover, whatever. But like, just like that you can get like that security and that safety feeling more and more over time, and your financials are better sorted than they are right now. Those are definitely also use cases. I mean, at the moment, you also would find, like, if you look at El Salvador, so like, you can also use crypto quite a lot. Also in Argentina, the crypto adoption is quite big. Last week, I was at Permissionless in New York, and there's, for instance, like PubKey, which is one of like the originals when it comes to Bitcoiners, right? Like, and it's a pub in Manhattan, basically, but you can pay there in crypto. They accept, I think, 10 or 12 different wallets and stuff. So you can basically drink your beer, you can easily pay in crypto, and that even in a New York. Like, this is not a third world country or an emerging country or whatever. This is really like in Manhattan, you can pay your beers in crypto if you go to the right bar, and that's quite cool. Like, this is like small stuff that starts, but we also, I think most of us can remember like a time where you could also not just go into a supermarket and tap and pay. Like, this is not too long ago, when you also still, you needed to insert your card, you needed to put the pin there as and all that stuff. Now you have the biometrics from your phone. You just tap your phone and boom, it's done, right? Like, it's so much more convenient already. And I think for crypto, we are just like at the starting point of many of those things, but it will also evolve over time. So also related to your 5 to 10 year question, I think if you could get to a stage And I'm not saying we should just copy stuff and bring it over into crypto and do it with a different technology. So for instance, tap and pay should not only be like that one-to-one thing and it should be replaced with another technology. It should also come with additional use cases, additional opportunities, and etc. But at the beginning, you might need to enable some of the things that people are already used to in order to make their thinking or open their thinking for more. What's coming after that?
Yeah, definitely. I could see that too as well with I mean, right now there are these centralized and the digital currencies about to be thrown at us. How do you feel about this?
I personally think like the CBDCs, it's and excuse the French again, it's bullshit. I think like also what the ECB is doing there, it's just like old old school money people trying to protect themselves into the new world, and I think they're completely failing. I think it's completely different from what we are trying to do on blockchain, right? Giving more transparency, immutable stuff, all the good things about like freedom of money, and they're getting back with a very centralized approach and even adding more control on top of that, right? Because now they do not even need to print stuff. They can just have it digitally, but they would still have the same or even more access because they know everything. Like what you do with your money is they can track all the flows. It's like, it's ridiculous. Like, and I think also the technology behind it is not that great, to be frank. So I personally, again, I think it's pure bullshit, and I hope it will fail completely. And I also do believe that it will fail completely because, yeah, it's just not the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, well, I really wanted to know also your view on this, because it is a risk that we have to also talk about it, because I think also the mainstream press and media, they're spinning it and will be spinning it into a direction where it's like, no, it's one of the safest options, and like, like really transparency here. I'm like, well, I'm not sure if it's that safe.
Yeah, that could easily be. And also like connecting back to your comment from earlier, around like the crypto use cases, and that most people in our regions are relating and connecting crypto to basically trading, right? Like speculative use cases, etc. Like this is still quite the case, right? In Europe, in North America, also like in some of the Asian countries, in the Middle East, etc. Like crypto is really seen as like an investment asset a lot, like, and as that investment and speculative use case. And I think this is also when you can still like manipulate people quite easily. If a central bank comes and says, hey, this is basically our way better version of crypto, and it's even safer because it's, you know, you can trust us because you've done for a long time before. Your parents have, your grandparents have. So you guys should, with the new cool technology, also trust us because it's even better than that. And it's pure bullshit. Like, so I think we really, as an industry, and that also connects like to that mass adoption part, a lot of it is not only about like that UX and accessibility part. A lot of it is also about education, educating people on what does that industry actually does, what does the technology help with, and helping people to get to those tangible use cases and better understand it, even if they are in a country or in a region where they have access to all the banking and things that products around financials that you might need, but maybe there's even a better use that you could do in the future, like with the connection to blockchain there. But like, yeah, we need to educate like a lot of people. Yeah.
And because I also feel that it is a very different way of thinking, you know, the whole idea of DAOs, smart contracts. I mean, we're completely not used to this. So this is very new to us. So what kind of different paradigm do you think we need to adapt? Like a paradigm shift, you know, what kind of thinking do we need for this to really internalize this?
Pooh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I think overall we really need to start breaking boundaries. Like we need to break like our thinking from before, and I think we need to accept that there's new things new things you can do, new use cases. You need to be very open to those new technologies. I think it also like kind of happens like in kind of a sequence, right? Like, because like you might come from those more real world use cases, then you see, okay, hey, this is actually like a cool thing that it can solve. So other people will also see and follow potentially, because they see that there is more substance to it that they might expect like from the very beginning. So I think, yeah, a lot of it will happen through that approach, but yeah, people need to be very open and people need to start playing around. But again, we as an industry also first need to be fully prepared for those guys to accept it, because at the moment, you know, like if you need like 1 hour to explain, I don't know, a friend or a family member, okay, this is what it takes you to get into that world. And then you can actually do your first action. This is not the best pitch, right? Like if you explain someone to use, I don't know, PayPal or Stripe or Venmo or whatever, it's like it takes you 2 minutes and you can immediately, this is the value prop, this is the use case, you can send me this and we are all going to be happy. In crypto, it still can take easy an hour or so, like before people, and then, you know, and I'm not talking custodial, self-custodial wallets there, like, because then it even gets more complicated, right? Then you need to explain people what a seed phrase is, how they need to protect it, etc. So, but yeah, we need to be better prepared for the paradigm shift, like to happen on the people side, to really, accept that new technology and access to it.
Yeah, because right now, for instance, if a community, let's say a small village, wants to do DAO and wants to maybe adopt some smart contracts, maybe use blockchain for transparency reasons in terms of supply chain, and is there an easy way to do that? Like, you know, is there any way to easily adapt all these things?
I think it's getting easier and easier, to be frank. Like, and also coming back to AI there, because now you can also technically code without coding, right? Like, so you can ask AI for help with coding for you. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to get yourself started as a builder, but there's also like a lot of services that evolve, like a lot of products that can also handhold you throughout that process. And I guess like that, what you just mentioned, that example around like supply chain, this is actually quite a good one, right? Because this is really like one of the advantages of blockchain, like that you get that full transparency in there, that you really create like a very cool use case around it. And I also see like that, like a lot of like clothing manufacturers started it at one point. Some of it stopped it at another point then, but like some of it are still doing it. But one of the good signals there was also that Rolex actually started using blockchain for tracking not only their supply chain, but also their service chain, basically. Because like with luxury goods, it can also be like the case, you know, that you run into a lot of counterfeits and fakes and stuff, and you don't know like the clear service history of a luxury product, etc. So if you put all of that on the blockchain, it's immutable, it's transparent, it's accessible by everyone, right? Like, so when you buy secondhand, like at one point, like one of those luxury goods, you might see, okay, first of all, it's legit, so it's an original, it's not a fake. And then I see, okay, that person brought it to jeweler XYZ at that and that date for a service, or there was a warranty case or whatever. So there's cool stuff happening around it, but of course, also still a long way. But I think it's good that even some of like the bigger brands, where you would not naturally think of that they would adopt it early, they are already in the game. I also know that certain car manufacturers started playing around with the idea. Unfortunately, it was stopped recently because, yeah, car industry is quite a difficult spot to be in at the moment. And I think budgets are also getting tighter and tighter there. So blockchain might not be the most pressing use case at the moment. But of course, like this is really a good use case. So, but coming back to your village, I think technologically, it's something what can be started relatively easily those days, right? There's also a lot of that education material already online, like that explains you like how you can find your way into it. Then again, there's a lot of services, there's stuff that can help you code, etc. So I think there's a lot of opportunities as well, and you don't need any kind of like centralized infrastructure point, right? Like you don't need to, I don't know, first go to AWS, then you need a credit card for paying your AWS. So first thing that might limit you already if you're living in a village in a third world country is a credit card, right? So you might not even be able like to go for the very basics if you want to do it. So maybe on the blockchain, it's already way easier to do it because you can relatively easily get the tokens that you might need, like the gas token, etc., and start building without all the other like core infrastructure or key infrastructure that you would typically need in order to get started.
Do you see then that we will move way more and more using those technologies into, I mean, the possibilities are endless then, right? Into decentralized digital organizational communities, or I don't know. What do you see?
Absolutely. I think it will become more and more decentralized. I think also that's also kind of the idea, like when we started with the collective, to decentralize Rootstock not only more as an ecosystem, but also to decentralize the organization of Rootstock. Because at one point, like coming back to your 5 to 10 year span, maybe it's pretty cool if, I don't know, one developer or like 2-3 developers and one product person at one point say, hey, we have that really, really cool idea and we want to bring it to market. And we see we have like all the infrastructure supporting that in front of us. Like we have a DAO that can provide the first financial incentives to get us started with a grant. Then we have like those builder rewards over time that can generate like an additional revenue source for us. We have all the technology around us. So it's quite easy for us to get started. And maybe we just need to create an entity, get the 3, 4, 5 people of us together, do a spin-off, and off we are, right? Like, so I would really love to see more and more of those smaller things happening, because they can be fixing very specific problems, or they can come up with a very cool product, even with a small team, etc. Like, you don't need those mega organizations. Probably at one point, more and more, you really can go more small, more lean, more decentralized, and also more efficient.
Yeah. No, I would love to see that way more as well. And what kind of risks and or fears do you have going into the future?
I mean, the biggest one, I guess, like for us as an industry, is that people won't care. Like, I think we, again, coming back to that, you can build the best product in the world, have the best features in the world. If nobody's using it, it will fail. So I think that's the biggest risk for us as an industry, that we do all of that stuff. We do all the UX, we do all the simplicity of use, we do all the education, but people would still be, yeah, no, it's nothing for me. If we would fail in that, of course, it would be really bad. There would still be a niche community, which is still couple of millions of people, right? Like that would probably still play around. Maybe even that number would grow and grow. But like that's my biggest fear, like that we do not manage to break that chasm. But like I think we have all the potential to do so. But that would be the biggest risk there. If you look at DAOs more specifically, I would say the biggest risks there is like the classics, like voting fatigue, concentration of power, those kind of things, like where we really need to make sure from our foundation point of view to enable that community to grow in the most organic way and like in a balanced way, if you will, so that we really can see that also like smaller backers have the opportunity to have a say in what's happening. And that we also make sure that the community, maybe of those smaller folks, really get a good voice, and that it's not like only played by a small fraction of the overall participants. I think this is a very classic DAO dilemma.
Mm-hmm. And like, how do you do that? That it's not centralized in a few, that you encourage everyone to. That's why I try to go into that direction. I asked you about the smart contracts. Who builds this? Because I have an idea, but I can't really,
Okay. So on the people itself, like on the way how we access the community and grow the community, we are always looking for a good balance there and to engage those guys, like also the smaller backers. Like we kind of like tier it in shrimps, dolphins, and whales, right? Like where you have like the different basically investment types or investment profiles, like or participation profiles. And we want to make sure that those guys also with smaller stakes are interested in what they can actually do on top of just staking their funds. In our case, it's like the Rift token in form of staked Rift token. It's a governance token in the DAO, and it's one of the native tokens of Rootstock. So basically, Rift is like the scaling token of Bitcoin, if you will. Like if you're mission aligned with Bitcoin, Rift is like the token that helps you to believe in that smart contracts, DApps on top of Bitcoin, Bitcoin L2s. This is where the party will happen if you're into Bitcoin plus that. So a Bitcoin Neo Maxi or a BTC Fi Maxi, what some people call that crowd, then Riff is a good opportunity for you. And then it's about like, what can you actually do with it? So one thing is like staking it and getting like financial rewards for it. But the other thing, and I think this is also how you can really access that bigger community, that there is no voting fatigue and people are just putting down their stakes and they wait for their rewards, is that you make it engaging for them. So you're connecting them to the builders. So we put builders in the spotlight. We just also recently launched a new format that's actually called Builder Spotlight, where we also do like podcasts with the builders in order for them to tell their story. And we're also in the website and on our DApp, we want to put the builders way more into focus, because it's not so much about like telling people about what the collective is doing. As soon as they understand it, they should be more focused on what are actually the builders that are building on Rootstock doing, and how can I best support those builders with my voting power, right? So as soon as you start building that emotional connection, it definitely is way more than just a financial incentive, because you have that emotional connection to those builders, to their stories, to their products. You might be a power user of that, you might be a regular user of that project, but like this is where like the whole thing basically starts making sense for me. So this is one of the things what we try to make sure that that community grows alongside that other communities, so that those folks are really engaged and participating. Then, of course, there's also other ways that you can do. We recently introduced like delegate structure into the DAO. Delegates, for those that don't know, it's like one of the governance essentials, if you will. Like it's like similar to, and that's probably not the best example, like the vote, like the election system in the US with those guys in between. I don't know, like the representatives or what they call, right? Like, so you basically voting only your representative, and then the representative putting down the vote for the presidential election. So you can, if you're just like having a small stake in the game, but you still want to see your voices represented well, and you don't have the time to find all the like-minded people, you could also put the trust into one of those delegates. Let's say one of the delegates is more tech focused and you're all into tech. Like you want to make sure that, I don't know, decentralization around technology is the biggest topic that drives you. So maybe you can identify one of the delegates that's thinking in that same region, and then you're putting your voting power into that delegate, and 10,000 other folks might do exactly the same. So even if you only have a small stake in the game, you might be really well represented with your delegate. And so this is something what is, again, like one of the essentials there in governance. And those guys are really doing a great job for us so far. So we have 12 delegates at the moment, and you can already see like the level of professionalism they bring and how they lift like the overall interaction in community engagement is incredible. Also for the builders, I would say it's a massive help, because they're kind of vetting the proposals, they're challenging the proposals before they go on chain. So when they're first in the forum off chain and they tell about what they plan to do, the delegates have very close contact with them. They starting to ask questions, they start to bring ideas. And I think it's also a massive help for the builders, but again, like also for the people staking and backing, because it can just be a good representation through those guys.
Yeah, super interesting to have like then delegate. I mean, it's a whole new world of reinventing how you organize a whole company, right?
Yeah.
And then
Absolutely.
options and possibilities are endless. It's fascinating because we can actually really completely reinvent the game, and at the same time use things that we also know from maybe more traditional ways of how we organize ourselves, like delegates. But then, I mean, it's super fascinating. And if we go a little bit outside of the crypto space, but in general, how the world is looking, what kind of risks do you see in general? Where are we going?
That's a very open question.
Into whatever you want to make out of it.
Listen, I think nowadays it's probably not the easiest environment or the easiest time to be alive, right? Like there's a lot of weird stuff going on. There's a lot of weird political landscape happening across the world. There's a lot of wars happening. There's a lot of bad stuff happening. Climate change is a massive thing, and I think nobody can still deny that, to be frank. I mean, every one of us has now experienced like super hot summers or super cold winter, like weird stuff happening, right? Like on all fronts. So I personally, to be frank, I personally always try to not get like too distracted by all of that. I still try to stay in the loop, like to be informed, but not to get like too concerned about it and to get desperate at one point, because like you could easily go down that rabbit hole, be stuck there forever and just say, oh, the world is such a bad place. It will never be better again. We are all fucked. We can basically stop here. So I typically try to be, to stay a bit outside of that, not going down any rabbit holes, trying to be as neutral as possible on that. Again, trying to be informed, but not getting concerned too much about it, because the way how I always typically put it, like there's stuff that's in your power, right? And there's stuff that's not within your power. So focus on the things where you can make a difference. Focus on the things where you can do something about. Don't get distracted by the stuff that you can't do anything about it. Like, I don't know if Trump or Musk or any other idiot like puts something weird on socials, and out of the sun there's huge conversations happening around it. There's the pro, there's the con area and community behind it, and it's getting ridiculous, right? Like, but for what? Like, who wins, who loses? There's no winner, there's no loser at the end. Like, it's do the stuff that you can influence. Like that's my biggest tip, and that's also what I try to focus on, and not getting crazy about things too much, to stay sane. Because again, you can easily, I guess, like get really, really like in a very desperate position at the moment if you're in too many of those rabbit holes at once.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I mean it gets overwhelming, right? And then if fear completely takes over, then we're lost.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, that's why also the podcast, I decided to also make the podcast for that reason. Just like, okay, let's look into that fear, and let's look at what can we actually do. You were mentioning also in the beginning systems, how maybe the crypto space and the DAOs, or like all these new ways of organizing ourselves, are new systems, and maybe this is how we can focus the power that we have into creating that, right? I don't know, or do you see other ways of what kind of power do you see that we can have to influence whatever we want to see? Or maybe on a personal level, you as an individual, just.
I mean, luckily, I'm in a good position to also help people buy technology, right? Like through the DAO with the whole team and everyone behind. Yes. So I think it's just about like keep pushing, keep executing on that. To really make sure to give people access to it, right? Like to give builders, but also people begging those builders like access to it, to that new technology, because it will enable so many things. You also said like multiple times in that conversation, like there's endless opportunities, and it's like that, right? And we might not even know like what, I don't know, 70-80% of those opportunities look like now, right? Like they might just like pop up in 3 years, 5 years, 7, whatever. And over time we will realize, oh, there was even way more than we would have ever thought of. So I feel like with help building those foundational elements and making sure that we think into that mass adoption preparation and make sure to have like the usability, the UX, the onboarding friendliness, etc. A reality for that space is already like a huge enabler. So then it's on the people, right? Like, do I want to join? Am I interested enough? Did the education that we as an industry do more and more also help those guys to really understand what we are doing and attracting them? So yeah, I think preparing that foundation, making sure they have access, and at the end, it's on the users, like if they want to use it or if they don't want to use it. But I would really love to see like millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions people joining and playing around in that based on that technology. And there will be a lot new things evolving then throughout, because yeah, as you absolutely correctly said, it's endless opportunities. At the moment, I feel, and also what I said earlier, like some of that stuff is still rebuilding things that are already in existence, but already with new stuff. Sorry for my dog in the background. But a lot of the stuff will be new, right? Like there will be new ideas evolving, stuff that was never seen before, and it's already start happening. And there will be more and more of those cases coming. But like, yeah, I really feel like this is the best thing what we can do right now, to keep building and to keep educating, and then more and more people will follow.
Yeah. No, I agree. And this is an active invitation for everyone to join.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, because I think also that once we all have different lenses on the opportunities or possibilities that this enables, right? Someone with a massive skill set in one certain thing and suddenly sees that new opportunity that's enabling this tool to open this new door for that person. And I mean, it's kind of a like snowball, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and also sometimes, to be frank, like you might first not think that you might be able to become a builder, but maybe at one point you from a user will shift into a builder seat because you just see, okay, it's that one thing that really freaks me out because it's not working or it's not in existence. Very similar to classic tech startups as well. Like a lot of those ideas come from problems, but like in blockchain and crypto, it might even be easier to do it because maybe it's just a very little tiny thing and you fix it, you put your smart contract up or your DApp or whatever, and you can easily like fix it not only for yourself, but also maybe for 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 other people. So I guess like the route into it is also quite low because you don't need to, I don't know, start with a crowdfunding or start with like angel money, VC, whatever, like, and you need to build like that whole entrepreneurial journey necessarily. I mean, for the bigger projects, yes, that's mainly the case. But like, even if you just have like a very small idea and you just want to build one little thing that fixes exactly one problem, the opportunity is right in front of you there. So again, like very active invitation for all of those that want to join the space. Have a look at it, check out like what you personally would do, and then like figure out like what are the things that annoy you. Like, is it a small thing? Is it a big thing? And maybe from a participant, you can become an active player.
And other maybe people that also would just lend the service of just being kind of the builder, but then like you can, you know, because in case you have maybe the idea, but you're not techie, other people that could be the techie for you.
Very good one. Yeah, there's like massive talent out there. Like I've attended, we with Rootstock, like we did like the whole ETH Global Hackathon series and many more hackathons last year and also this year. And you meet so many great tech people, like a lot of them, like really super well talented guys. For them, more the problem is they don't have a lot of business people yet in those setups. Like, so it's less about that. So it would probably be a good mix if we get more also like of those folks into the industry, then connecting with the tech folks and starting to do something really, really amazing. Because yeah, the amount of folks I've talked to that pitched me an idea coming from a very tech background with a very tech heavy idea, sometimes after 15 minutes, you still don't understand what they're actually doing. And then it's like, oh, okay, can you explain that again? Can you like, who's using your thing at the end, like, and what's like let's say I'm starting here, I'm sitting at my desk, what do I need to do, and what would it give to me? And a lot of them failed on that part. So I guess like there's a huge opportunities, like, because many techies are already there, because typically they are more interested in new technology. So there is already a lot happening. And now it's probably also about like getting more people like with a more like, let's say, project management, economic, commercial mindset, like into those collabs, like to get really cool stuff out of it. Yeah.
And do you think governments know about all this? Like how to,
Government.
yeah, like governments in terms of all the infrastructure that we could have with build on all these smart contracts. I mean, we have so much bureaucracy. I mean, especially Germany. I mean, yeah, if they knew about this.
I think in general, like governments are too way behind.
Yeah,
I mean, it especially like your example, like Germany, like Germany did not even fully onboard Web 2 yet, right? Like, I mean, there's still a lot of manual processes involved. Whenever you need something, like there is physical copies sent from A to B to get signed, and then eventually make your way to you. It's crazy, right? So they're not even in the digital age yet. So I think they're like light years away from blockchain, to be frank.
No,
But also on the other side, to be honest, there's other governments that do a way better job. Like they have really like very good digital offices where you can get all the documents fully online. You get your confirmations to your app on the phone to validate that it's you, etc. So there is definitely governments that work way better. Like even like in Spain, it's already way better. I would say here where I live at the moment in Andorra, it's also way better. But I think from blockchain use, there's probably still a long way to go. I personally would say, and that's also something what we've tried already a while ago with the city of Buenos Aires, like a project around like digital identity. And I think this is also where blockchain probably could become one of the better use cases for governments. Because as we see also like a lot of immigrants moving around from country A, B, or C into another region, etc. So, and a lot of them have unclear status, unclear documentation, etc., etc. So sometimes it's not. I mean, it's a security risk as well to a certain extent, right? Like so, I think if you start to put like digital identities or so like on a blockchain, that could be a good first use case, so that you get like all your stuff that you have, like where you now have like your ID cards, and then you need to renew every once in a while, and you have your driver's license and you need to renew that as well. Like you can put a lot of that stuff on the blockchain as well, right? And then it's just way easier because you cannot do fake ones like in the US, for instance. I guess like it's quite a huge thing, like to have fake driver's licenses to buy alcohol before you're 21. So you could do all of that on blockchain, and then there would be no 17-year-old standing like in a liquor store and saying, "But this is me, like I'm 21." Like, I mean, but I think digital identity could really become like one of the things where it's quite important, or where it could become quite important for government, and all sorts of authorities, like in a government's function, to get started on.
Yeah. No, it's super fascinating. So, I mean, what would be then the new world in the making for you? I ask that to everyone coming to the podcast, because since the name is New World in the Making.
This is also a good one. I personally think, it's really a lot about like breaking boundaries, or having a huge mind shift happening, that existing structures might not be the best choice for the future anymore. Maybe we need to rethink a lot of stuff. As you said absolutely correctly, like opportunities are endless. Like if you think about blockchain and crypto, so make use of those things. Don't be afraid of it. Find your way into it, play around, and the possibilities are really endless. Like you can get so many cool things out of it, so many different use cases. It's just, I think, a lot like in our mind, like that we as individuals or as communities, like we need to think differently, and we also get a bigger say in stuff. We have easier accessibility to different things because it just becomes easier to get started. You're less limited because you might not need to, I don't know, talk to your bank to first get a credit or a loan or whatever, like to get started with a small business idea. You might have way better opportunities on the blockchain there, to just get started, to remove barriers, basically. Yeah, I think that describes it quite well. Like, be open for that new world, remove barriers, break barriers, and yeah, think in endless opportunities, and don't be afraid of it. Of course, when people are talking to me, like friends, family, yeah, I heard about that scam. Oh, there was something happening. Oh, there was a hack happening. Yeah, but so what? Like, that's also happening in traditional systems. Like, people get constantly hacked, big systems, PlayStation networks and Microsoft, whatever. Like, there's account data stolen, banks get hacked. So it's not only there. Like, media puts it always like in a very huge spotlight as soon as it happens, like in crypto, to put it also like back in that dodgy, shady niche somehow. I guess like at least a lot of them do it. So I think, yeah, except there is a bit of a risk. Of course, nothing comes without a risk, but like, be brave, join it, and just get the best out of it for yourself and for your own individual use case. And I think it's also there to support like all of those individual ideas, use cases, and like your position, my position, right? Like, because like central authorities tend to think like, okay, this is covering like 70% or 80% of my market, so this is good enough, but they might not have the very custom individual option for you, but you might discover it on a blockchain solution.
Yeah. Yes. And okay, so imagine there's someone listening and wants to build. We already covered that. I mean, they go to Rootstock Collective, and then they can start maybe there. And then someone that wants to start their own DAO, or maybe transition towards a DAO, that they have a business and would like to adapt something more into that DAO structure.
Mhm.
What would you suggest? What are the steps?
Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's go. Just go.
No, it's like, to be honest, like, it depends on what you want to achieve, right? Like, there's also like some opportunities that are quite easy to realize, like almost like a white label solution. For instance, we are also working together with Tally, which is one of the leading governance platforms, and you can, for instance, just launch a DAO on Tally, kind of like, so all the interaction happens there. You don't need to program anything, basically, apart from putting your logo and some logic in the back. But the question there is like, what for would you do it? Like, do you really need to have like your fully owned DAO, or maybe you can also like be part of an existing DAO as a builder? Like, we are also thinking about like, it's nothing that will happen probably in the next 6 to 12 months. But at one point, we are also thinking about almost becoming a launch pad, like where projects could also come and, let's say, your DAO is all about protocol governance. Do you really need to create your own DAO for it, or might the launchpad be a better home for you? Like, let's say one of our builders is thinking about doing protocol governance, so they are also thinking about creating their own DAO, or could they maybe just use an existing DAO with an existing community, an existing governance token, and just say, hey, we are here. We want to put that part of our business into the hands of the community. So please help us as a community. So I think we will probably see more and more of that kind of like consolidation happening, where there's like people that got the tech right, that got the foundation right, that already have the community, and other people with the thing they want to see governed, just putting that on it, like not doing a whole different DAO. Because at one point, like, when also all the hype around like L2s on Ethereum, on Solana, on Bitcoin started, out of the sudden there's 10,000 plus blockchains in existence, and who needs that, right? So if we would be like in 3-5 years down the road in a point where there's like tens of thousands of DAOs in existence, then we probably did the same mistake just again. They've just like finding a solution for every little tiny idea that not necessarily needed that kind of solution. So maybe it's smarter to then not do it. So yeah, again, coming back to your question, I think really think about what you actually want to achieve, and if there's like already smart existing solutions in place that you could just better leverage in order to avoid all that struggle around like building your own DAO, because I can tell you from my personal experience, it's not an easy thing. And it's not only the tech side, you also need to think about that governance thing. You need to think about entities, foundations, like it has to have a legal wrapper and stuff. Like it's not the easiest thing to get started. So yeah, if you really have a very individual use case where you think you can only represent it if you do it yourself, feel free to do it. It's going to be a long way, but the good thing here is the governance folks are probably the most supportive group of people I've ever met in my life. Like all the governance people of the different DAOs, no matter how big the DAO is, are really supportive and super open about all their experience. It's different than compared like to typically the lab side of those businesses or any traditional business, whatever, where you would not share like your, let's say, your best lessons learned, insights and stuff that you experienced, that you paid for, that you wasted time on, right? With your direct competitors. In that way, it's really seen like we are one movement. It's not like we are 100 different ones. It's like we in total want to get one thing right. And so the support is really amazing. So if you're really in the situation where you ultimately decide, I want to build my own DAO, it's not a huge group, basically. It's probably 200, 300 people in the world that are playing in that niche in a significant sense. But that group of people is really amazing and super, super supportive. You can meet a lot of them throughout the different conferences or online, and there's also a lot of material that can be found. So yeah, there is already like a lot of stuff that can easily be shared with those guys interested.
Wow, it was so fascinating. I can't wait to dive into that even more. And yeah, I mean, please build the support for then companies or organizations, all sorts of things that can then reach out to you. And yeah, I mean, we don't need individual DAOs for everything. I mean, if there's already everything built for that, I mean, brilliant. Great. We want to build all these tons of blockchains. Like, no, if there's already one, it's working great. Of course. So yeah, please do that. We will need that for sure. Okay, so already going towards the finishing questions. What has been surprising to you recently? Something that you would say, like we've covered a lot of the risk and fears and all that stuff. Maybe something that has surprised you.
Good one. I mean, that industry never stops to surprise, to be honest. But I think maybe to me the most surprising thing is, if I look back at the last like 9 months or 10 months or so, is that there is a start of like something more stable happening. Like when I go to different conferences or talk to other industry leaders, there's like, for me, at least like for the area where we are playing in, there's 3 main topics. It's about UX and accessibility. It's about Bitcoin yield, and it's about ecosystem growth. Those are the 3 things. Nobody is really talking about anything outside of that. And I think before there were more hype cycles, like shorter hype cycles, like out of the sudden you have like the NFTs, then you have like AI as the main buzzword. But like it's like it was happening in such a pace, so that basically from every 2 conferences or 3 conferences to the next 3, there was a different buzzwords on most of the backdrops and banners of projects that they wanted to accommodate to still stay relevant, right? Like in their outside representation. But now it's really like you keep hearing talks, panels, keynotes about those 3 things, and I think this is good because it's still not boring, because it's still not a full year, I would say, that those 3 topics are sticking around. And nobody has still resolved it. So the work still needs to be done. But the consistency in the focus there, I think, is really helpful, because those are like, especially around that UX topic and accessibility, those are some of the hard requirements that we as an industry need to fix before making like that mass adoption a reality or that bigger adoption a reality. So therefore, I really think like it's good to see, and it's a good surprise to see that we have that consistency now. And I'm really looking forward to the second half of the event season, because then the Asian and the LATAM events going to start. If the same consistency still continues, or if we have a new hype topic, I really hope that we have consistency and stability on those three things. We probably will see by then like more stuff already coming into reality, especially around Bitcoin yield products. Like there's a lot going on also on the Rootstock side actually, but also some of the other players are doing similar stuff there. But this is a good thing, I would say. Yeah. So this really surprised me positively, even if it might sound a bit counterintuitive. But yeah, this is my biggest surprise.
No, it makes sense. So that we get a little bit more depth into this, and it's not what we were saying, you know, like it's not like this. We are constantly getting new input and kind of getting lost, and just like, okay, let's focus on like how do we do UX, right? Because what do you think is still the major most the biggest barrier for Bitcoin, and then also all the use on Bitcoin? But
I think people are just not 100% clear. They're afraid of losing their assets, I would say. Because at the moment, you know, it's not only important what kind of asset you hold, it's also important which blockchain it's on. If you screw up anything in that process from transferring it from one wallet to another, you have a typo here, you select the wrong thing, you check the wrong thing, boom, maybe all your assets are gone that you wanted to transfer. So I think this is still like something that a lot of people are afraid of. And therefore, the more we can get into that chain abstraction part where people do not really need to worry about what's happening in the background and can more focus on, hey, this is actually what like is relevant to me. I hold Bitcoin, I maybe hold Riff, maybe I hold some meme coins, whatever. So this is what I have. I don't need to care and worry about what's happening in the background, from which blockchain it's transferred to which. Like I just need to know what's in my wallet, basically. And this is it. I think if we can get to that point, that would already be like a huge improvement, so that people are less afraid of losing anything because they cannot do anything wrong themselves, like in the process, right? Like the more we remove those barriers, I guess like the easier it will become. So yeah, this is definitely one of the focus points there.
Okay, yeah. And I don't know, is there something before we get into the last question, something that you would like to add that we haven't covered, something that you would like to just share?
I mean, of course, another call to action. If any of your listeners is interested in Bitcoin, in DAO, wants to tap into crypto, Rootstock Collective is always a good home for you. Like, you don't need to go crazy with anything. Like, you can just start, look into it, play around, listen to some of the builders, see what they are doing, see what we are doing. The opportunities in form of rewards at the moment are really still very attractive and good. So it might really be worth like having a deeper dive there. There's a cool community forming, a community that supports the other members of the community. The builders are very active, the delegates are very active. So it's not a place you would just need to figure out stuff for yourself. It's also a place where you can ask others to help and support you along that journey. So yeah, let's figure out what the collective can hold for you and join. It's a very exciting stage.
And I really like to finish the podcast by asking you to maybe ask a question for the listeners to stay with, to ponder what kind of, I don't know, maybe a question that you would like to leave the listeners with.
Also a very good one. I think basically, what can you contribute to a more decentralized future? That's I think a good one, because you can be active, you can be passive, but the idea behind it is decentralized. So think about like what can it carry for you, or what can you contribute in order to make it even better?
I love that. because we need all hands on deck.
Yeah, absolutely. We need more people.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much, Sascha. This was really eye-opening, and we need more conversations of those. So yeah, really thank you so much.
Thanks to you, Adriana. It was really a great pleasure. Super enjoyable conversation. Thank you so much.